You know how it feels when decent folks turn their backs on someone who needs mercy most, when good Christian neighbors forget what the good book teaches about loving your neighbor. Well, this story's about a time when one man's conscience spoke louder than a whole town's gossip, and what happened when he chose kindness over keeping peace. The church bell chimed 9 o'clock when Martha Clemens stepped onto Main Street, gripping her empty market basket like her mama's rosary beads. Behind Henderson's store window, 3 women huddled together whispering like hens in a henhouse. "There goes that cursed woman," Mrs. Patterson hissed, yanking little Mary close to her skirts. 3 good folks dead since she came to town. Samuel Rivers shifted on his wagon seat, watching the shameful dance play out. Martha walked up to Henderson's door. Clicked the lock turned before her weathered hand touched brass. She tried the bakery next. Mrs. Olson flipped that closed sign quicker than Sunday supper, though fresh loaves still cooled on the windowsill. Same thing at the post office. Martha stopped at the church steps, staring at those heavy oak doors. Inside, Reverend Morrison's shadow passed the stained glass window. The doors stayed shut tight. What drove this lonely woman to whisper those desperate words? Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Samuel's shoulders ached something fierce as he wrestled with that blamed windmill chain. Rust flakes rained down, getting in his eyes and making them water. The metal snapped with a crack loud enough to wake the dead, echoing clear across empty pasture. Water barely dribbled from the spout wouldn't fill a coffee cup, let alone water his thirsty cattle. His old bay mare snorted behind him, hooves shuffling nervous-like in the dirt. Samuel turned around. Lord Almighty, a woman stood there at the edge of his cottonwood grove, still as a fence post. Woman-shaped shadow against the sunset, all orange and gold. Martha. She stepped closer, her woolen shawl hanging in tatters. Threads caught the evening breeze like spiderwebs. 8 long miles from town on foot, and her in those worn-out boots. "Evening, Mr. Rivers." Her voice sounded like sandpaper on rough wood. Samuel's hand drifted down to his gun belt without thinking. 20 years of habit dies hard. That old Colt pressed heavy against his hip, leather warm from his body heat. Martha's eyes followed his movement. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Folks say I bring misfortune wherever I set foot." Words barely carried over the wind, sighing through prairie grass. "Maybe they got the right of it." Samuel's fingers brushed the holster, cold metal underneath worn leather. 3 good people passed since I come to this town," Martha continued, her voice getting smaller. "My dear husband Henry, old Pete down at the livery stable, your foreman Jim in that flash flood." The bay mare pawed at dirt, bridle jangling like church bells on a still morning. "Won't nobody blame you none." Martha stared right at his gun. "Might even thank you for cleaning up their trouble." Samuel's throat went dry as creek bed in August. That gun belt felt heavier than a sack of grain, pulling at his middle like an anchor dragging him down. Martha stood perfectly still, hands loose at her sides, just waiting. Prairie grass whispered secrets to itself. That kerosene lamp flickered in his kitchen window. He'd left the wick burning since morning, pure waste of good lamp oil. His stomach growled loud enough for both of them to hear. Samuel's hand dropped away from his belt. "You eaten supper yet?" Martha blinked like an owl caught in lamplight. What did you say?" But what Samuel said next would change everything between them. Samuel's fingers traced that old leather holster, feeling cold steel underneath, through worn cowhide. Martha stood maybe 10 feet away, close enough he could see the careful patches sewn into her cotton dress, real neat stitches, the kind that spoke of a woman who took pride in her work. Her hands hung open at her sides, palms facing out, rough skin, calloused from honest labor milking cows, scrubbing floors, grinding corn. His dear Sarah used to have hands just like that. Judge a person by their hands, not by idle gossip. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, clear as Sunday morning church bells. The gun belt's brass buckle clicked as Samuel worked it loose. 20 pounds of iron and leather slid down his hips. He caught the holster before it hit dirt, walked 3 measured steps to his porch rail, and set it down gentle as a sleeping baby. Martha's eyes went wide. Her chest rose and fell quick and shallow, like a bird caught in a trap. "Got cattle need doctoring," Samuel said. That hand-forged pump handle stuck when he tested it, taking both hands to work free. "Vegetable patch gone to weeds. Pays room and board, plus fair wages." Martha's mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish gasping air. You want to hire me? Her voice cracked on that word, hire. Samuel pulled his daddy's old pocket watch from his vest. Checked the time. Near 7 o'clock. Stars would be showing soon in that darkening sky. Don't enter into it. He snapped the watch shut. Tucked it back safe. Need help. You need honest work. Martha stepped closer, her worn boots scuffing against packed earth. Samuel could smell prairie dust in her graying hair, see the frayed threads at her dress collar. What folks will say? Samuel shrugged. Folks been talking plenty already, but ain't killed me yet. He stuck out his right hand. Martha stared at it long enough for a crow to caw 3 times from the cottonwood grove, then reached out slow. Her palm met his rough skin against rough skin. Her grip locked around his fingers with surprising strength. Deal, she said. They shook once, firm and final. Martha glanced toward the cabin, then back to his face. When do I start? Sunrise tomorrow, but need to check the south pasture first thing. Samuel gestured toward the house. Kitchen's got a spare cot. Blankets in the cedar chest. Those chimney stones stood black against the evening sky, cold as winter graves. No smoke had risen from that fireplace in 2 long years. But tomorrow, Martha would need cooking heat, and that meant Samuel would have to unlock Sarah's room. Martha's wooden mortar scraped against granite as she ground willow bark into fine powder. Her wrists moved in steady circles, muscles working under sun-weathered skin. The bitter scent made Samuel's nose wrinkle from clear across the barn. 3 of his best Herefords lay bloated in the south pasture, sides swollen tight as rain barrels. Samuel had figured them for Goner's $200 of good beef rotting under September sun. Hold his head steady now, Martha said. Samuel gripped the bull's horns while Martha poured bark tea down its gullet. The animal's eyes rolled back, showing pink-veined whites. Its purple tongue hung thick as a boot sole. Where'd you learn doctoring cattle? Martha wiped her hands on a clean flour sack. My pa treated animals back in Kansas territory, before the grasshoppers took everything we had. The bull's breathing slowed down. Its barrel chest stopped heaving like a bellows. Samuel counted his own heartbeats 1, 2, 3, waiting to see if the critter would live or die. The Hereford's legs twitched. It rolled up onto its belly, shook that massive head, and lumbered toward the water trough like nothing had happened. Well, I'll be blessed. By supper time, Martha had saved all 3 head. That evening she knelt beside his failed vegetable garden, sifting dirt through her fingers. Late beans came from her apron pocket, wrinkled seeds Samuel would have fed to chickens. Ground's still got life in it, she said. Just needs coaxing. Her bare hands worked neat rows in earth Samuel had cursed for 2 seasons. Each seed dropped precise as clockwork. Well, water darkened the soil to rich chocolate brown. They ate off tin plates on the porch steps. Cast iron skillet balanced between them, seasoned black from years of good use. Salt pork and beans, cornbread still warm from the Dutch oven. Martha passed the molasses without being asked. Samuel shared his coffee when hers ran dry. More beans. Much obliged. Words came dear. Hard work spoke louder. Tuesday afternoon brought hoofbeats, drumming across prairie grass. Sheriff Hawkins rode up on his sorrel gelding, badge catching sunlight like a mirror. The tin star had gone green around the edges from summer sweat. Samuel. Sheriff. Hawkins pushed his hat back, showing a pale line across his forehead. Folks in town are mighty concerned about your arrangements out here. Samuel kept mending fence wire. Barbs bit through his leather gloves as he twisted galvanized steel. That a fact. Some say it ain't fitting. A woman living out here with a bachelor man. The wire snapped tight with a sharp ping. Samuel tested the tension, found it solid. My business who I hire to work my land. Surely it is. Just thought you ought to know. Tongues are wagging. Samuel straightened up, met the lawman's eyes straight on. Tongues always wag. Sheriff, don't make it worth listening to. Hawkins climbed back in his saddle, leather creaking under his weight. Just be careful who you trust. Samuel. The sheriff's horse kicked up dust clouds as they headed townward. Samuel watched till they disappeared behind rolling hills. Martha stepped from the barn, leading his bay mare to pasture. She'd been inside the whole time, but something about her careful movements told Samuel she'd heard every blamed word. The question was, what exactly had Sheriff Hawkins meant by trust? Mayor Thompson's gavel cracked against oak like splitting kindling. The sound bounced off whitewashed church walls and those colored glass windows, echoing something fierce. 23 souls packed the pews more than most Sunday services ever drew. "This here meeting's about Rivers harboring that woman against our community's welfare," Thompson announced. His jowls shook when he talked, sweat beading across his forehead, despite the evening chill settling in. Martha pressed her back flat against the church's rough fieldstone. Cold seeped right through her cotton dress, raising goose flesh all along her arms. Those vesper bells would be ringing soon. She needed to hear what was being planned and skedaddle before anybody spotted her. "Henderson, you speak your piece first." Chair legs scraped across wooden planks inside. "Simple enough. Mayor, we quit selling to Rivers till he comes to his senses. No flour, no coffee beans, no supplies of any sort." "Agreed." That was Patterson's voice carrying clear through the stone wall. "My missus won't sell him eggs neither. Not cream, not butter, nothing from our place." Martha's fingernails bit into her palms. The rough stone scratched her shoulder blades as she shifted, trying to catch every blamed word. "What about grain for his livestock?" Thompson asked. "Cut him off complete," said somebody Martha didn't recognize. "Man wants to harbor bad fortune. He can feed his cattle prairie grass." Laughter rippled through that congregation, harsh sounds that made Martha's belly clench tight as a fist. "Starve him out if we have to," Mrs. Patterson added, her voice sharp as a kitchen knife. "He'll see reason quick enough when winter comes knocking." The Vesper bells started their evening song, deep bronze tones rolling across the prairie, calling faithful folks to evening prayers. Martha pushed off from that stone wall and ran like the devil himself was chasing her. Her bare feet slapped against packed dirt as she sprinted toward Samuel's place. Each breath burned in her chest. Those bells kept ringing behind her, getting fainter with every desperate step. Back at the cabin, Martha's hands shook like aspen leaves as she pulled her few belongings from the kitchen chest. Her worn Bible pages yellow as dried corn silk, sewing kit with bone needles and cotton thread, dried herbs wrapped tight in muslin feverfew, willow bark, chamomile for headaches. Everything fit inside one square of oilcloth. She tied the corners neat and tight, making a bundle no bigger than a newborn calf. 23 years of living, all wrapped up in something light enough to carry one-handed. Martha set that bundle beside the kitchen door, then sat herself down at the table to wait. Samuel would find it when he came in from evening chores. He'd understand without her having to explain a blessed thing. Outside, his bay mare nickered soft in the corral. Hoofbeats approached from the south pasture, Samuel coming back from checking fence lines. The door latch clicked. Samuel stepped inside, took one look at her oilcloth bundle, and stopped dead in his tracks. But what he said next would decide whether Martha vanished into prairie darkness or whether something far more dangerous was fixing to happen. Samuel's boots crossed that kitchen floor in 3 measured steps. He reached down, hefted Martha's oilcloth bundle in his work-roughened palm, then set it back down gentle beside the door. "Ain't going nowhere." Martha's shoulders went stiff. She kept staring at the scarred wooden table, studying grain patterns worn smooth by years of family meals and honest work. "They'll starve you out, Samuel. Cut off supplies, grain for your horses." "Let 'em try." Samuel pulled his daddy's old watch from his vest pocket, checked the time by lamplight. 7:15. Stores would stay open another good hour. "Hitch up the wagon." Martha's head snapped up like a startled doe. "What? Need supplies from township? You're coming along." Her face went white as fresh flour. "Samuel, I can't." "Can Will." He reached for his hat hanging on the door peg. "Time folks saw exactly where I stand on matters." Martha's hands shook like autumn leaves as she helped harness the bay mare to the wagon. Leather traces jingled against metal rings. That old mare stamped her hooves. Sensing trouble through the reins, Samuel climbed onto the driver's seat, offered his hand down. Martha hesitated long enough for an owl to hoot twice from the cottonwoods, then took his grip. Her fingers felt cold as creek water despite the warm evening. Wagon wheels creaked against hard-packed dirt as they rolled toward Millbrook. Main Street stretched ahead like a pathway through unfriendly territory, false-fronted buildings casting long shadows in the dying sunlight. A shutter slammed shut at Miller's hat shop. Mrs. Brennan's face vanished from the window quick as a prairie dog down its hole. Another bang. The barber's shutters folded inward, loud as gunshots. Children playing marbles in the street scattered when their mothers called sharp commands. "Lucy, get inside this minute!" Samuel guided the mare straight to Henderson's mercantile. The open sign still hung crooked in the window, but Henderson stood behind his counter with arms crossed tight, mouth set hard as a bear trap. Samuel tied the reins to the hitching post, helped Martha down from the wagon seat. Her boots touched ground just as Henderson flipped that sign to "closed." Samuel pushed through the door anyway. The brass bell overhead jangled like a death rattle. "We're closed. Rivers?" "Sign said open till 8 o'clock. Samuel pulled a folded paper from his shirt pocket. "Need these supplies." Henderson's eyes darted toward Martha, then back to Samuel. Sweat beaded along the merchant's balding scalp like morning dew. "Don't reckon I got most of what you're wanting." "Then?" "Check the list first." Samuel's voice carried no heat, no challenge. Just steady pressure, like floodwater against a levee. Henderson snatched that paper, scanned the items with his spectacles perched on his nose: flour, coffee beans, salt pork, rifle cartridges. "Suppose I might have some of this truck." 20 minutes later, Martha helped load supplies into the wagon bed. 100-pound flour sacks, tins of coffee, boxes of ammunition. Henderson's hands shook like he had the palsy as he counted change from Samuel's payment. "Doctor." Peterson stepped from his office across the dusty street. His black medical bag hung from one hand, worn smooth from 30 years of house calls. "Mrs. Clemens," Martha looked up from arranging supplies in the wagon bed. "Wondering if you might know something about willow bark dosages for children's fevers." Henderson's cash drawer slammed shut like a coffin lid. But Martha stepped closer to the good doctor, spoke in low, careful tones about grinding bark. "Steeping times. Proper measurements for little ones." Mrs. Olson's face appeared at her bakery window. She watched Martha demonstrate grinding motions with her hands, explaining healing ways her daddy had taught her years back. The doctor nodded, asked more questions. Martha answered every blessed one. But as they prepared to leave town, Martha noticed something that made her blood run cold as January fresh smoke rising from the church chimney, and lantern light spilling from every window. Another meeting, and this time, the whole blamed town was gathering. That creek water stunk like a privy in August. Martha knelt beside the stagnant pool, watching green slime swirl around her fingers, thick as corn mush and twice as foul. No wonder the fever had taken hold. "How long since your town well ran dry?" she asked Dr. Peterson. 3 weeks now." His black medical bag hung loose in his grip. Leather cracked from prairie heat. "Had no choice but to use creek water for drinking." Martha pulled her hand from that putrid mess, wiped it clean on her apron. The slime left dark stains across the cotton fabric like sin itself. Back in town, little Emma Olson burned hotter than a cook stove. Her mama held that limp child, tears cutting tracks through dust on her cheeks like plow furrows in dry earth. "Please, Mrs. Clemens," Mrs. Olson begged, dropping to her knees right there in Samuel's kitchen. Her Sunday dress hit the dirt floor, soaking up mud from folks' boots. "She won't wake up, won't take water, nothing." Martha pressed her palm to Emma's forehead. Heat poured off that child like she was made of coals. Her heartbeat fluttered weak and fast under Martha's fingertips, like a dying bird. "Bring me willow bark, all you can lay hands on." "We ain't got none." "Strip it fresh from creek trees. Move quick now." Mrs. Olson scrambled up, her knees black with kitchen dirt, and ran calling for her husband. Martha turned to Dr. Peterson. "The Patterson twins. Same as this one. Fever won't break. Can't keep food down." His hands shook when he spoke. "I'm fresh out of ideas, Martha." Martha's wooden mortar scraped against stone as she ground fresh willow bark. The bitter powder stung her nose something fierce, but she kept working. Little Emma needed tea strong enough to fight that fever before it cooked her brain. Samuel appeared in the doorway, his work shirt soaked black with sweat. "Brought clean water from our well. Filled every bucket I could find." "Good man. Heat some for the tea." More children arrived as word spread faster than wildfire. The Morrison boy burning up in his daddy's arms. 3 of Henderson's girls, their lips cracked and bleeding from fever heat. Parents who'd crossed streets to avoid Martha now stood in Samuel's kitchen. Some falling to their knees in the mud, tracked across his clean floor. "Save our babies," Mrs. Patterson sobbed. She crawled on hands and knees across that dirty floor, grabbing at Martha's skirt with desperate fingers. Black dirt from her garden stained her dress clear up to the waist. "Please, in the name of all that's holy," Martha worked through the long night. Willow bark tea cooled in tin cups. Feverfew poultices pressed to burning foreheads. Clean well water sponged across small bodies that twitched and moaned in fevered dreams. Her hands moved without stopping grinding herbs, steeping teas, wringing out cloths. Parents took turns holding their young ones while Martha spooned medicine between cracked lips. By sunrise, Martha's dress hung in tatters worse than any beggar's rags. Herb stains, mud, and Lord knows what else covered the cotton from collar to hem. Her fingernails were black with willow bark residue. Sweat and bone-deep tiredness had her swaying on her feet like wheat in wind. But Emma Olson's fever broke with the dawn light. "Mama." That little voice came thin as paper, but her eyes focused clear and bright. "Mrs. Oppo." Olson collapsed beside the cot, weeping into her muddy hands. Thank merciful heaven above. And one by one, the other children improved. The Morrison boy asked for water. The Patterson twins sat up asking for their mama's cornbread. Parents who'd organized Martha's exile now crawled in the mud outside Samuel's cabin, kissing her filthy hands in pure gratitude. But Martha barely noticed their thanks, because through the kitchen window, she could see 3 more pillars of smoke rising across the valley. Smoke that meant more families were burning furniture to boil bad water. And that meant this fever was just getting started. Mrs. Henderson's fingers trembled like aspen leaves as she counted copper pennies into Martha's palm. The same woman who'd slammed her mercantile door now stood close enough Martha could smell rosewater soap in her graying hair. "Heard tell you might know something about headache remedies," Henderson said. Her voice barely rose above the chatter of other customers buying flour and coffee beans. Martha pocketed those coins payment for 2 pounds of wheat flour and studied the merchant's face. Dark circles ringed Henderson's eyes like bruises. Her jaw stayed clenched tight enough to crack walnuts. "How long you been suffering?" 3 weeks now, ever since—" Henderson's gaze dropped to the wooden counter. "Ever since that fever scare took hold?" Martha reached into her cloth herb pouch, pulled out dried leaves that crumbled between her fingers like tobacco. "Feverfew. Steep it weak as morning coffee. Twice daily till the pain quits." Henderson accepted those herbs like they were pure gold. "What do I owe you for this?" "Nothing at all." Outside Henderson's store, Martha noticed Mrs. P. Olson sweeping her bakery steps for the 3rd time that morning. The woman looked up when Martha passed by, then nodded a quick bob of her sunbonnet that spoke louder than Sunday sermons. "Morning, Mrs. Clemens." "Morning to you." No more words passed between them, but Mrs. P. Olson kept sweeping those same clean steps, stealing glances at Martha as she continued down Main Street toward the post office. Sheriff Hawkins stepped from the jailhouse, his tin badge catching September sunlight. When he spotted Martha, he touched the brim of his hat with 2 fingers, a gesture of respect she hadn't seen in years. "Mrs. Clemens, whole town's grateful for what you done during the sickness." Martha's throat tightened up. "Just did what needed doing." "Still and all, grateful." He cleared his throat, spat tobacco juice into the dusty street. "You planning to stay on at Rivers Place permanent-like?" That question hung between them like morning mist. Martha studied the lawman's weathered face, looking for traps hidden beneath his casual tone. "Haven't rightly decided yet." But that was a bold-faced lie. She'd decided 3 nights back, sitting on Samuel's porch while he whittled wooden toys for the children she'd helped heal. The steady rhythm of his knife against pine had soothed something raw and aching inside her chest. That evening, Martha heated coffee grounds in Samuel's blue enamel pot. The kitchen smelled of wood smoke and fresh brewed coffee scents that meant home in ways she'd clean forgotten. Samuel entered carrying an armload of split pine logs. His sleeves were rolled past the elbows, forearms dark with sawdust and honest sweat. "Harvest dance is Saturday coming," he said, stacking wood beside the fireplace Sarah had loved. Martha poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed him one. Steam rose between them like incense. "You thinking of going?" Samuel tested the coffee's heat against his bottom lip, then took a careful sip. "Thinking we should both go. Together." That word "together" settled between them solid as a foundation stone. Martha's fingers tightened around her cup, feeling warmth seep through tin into her palms. "Folks will stare something fierce." Let them stare. Samuel sat across from her at that scarred kitchen table. Got nothing to be ashamed of. Martha smoothed her blue cotton dress, the one she'd saved from better days, aired out and mended with careful stitches. She'd been thinking about wearing it to the dance, wondering if people would see the woman who'd once worn fine dresses, or the woman who'd ground healing herbs in their kitchens. Samuel. Yes'm. Why'd you take off your gun that first evening? Samuel set down his coffee cup, met her eyes straight on across the table. Because you gave me a choice between what folks expected and what felt right, and I chose right. Outside, autumn wind rattled the windows like skeleton fingers. But somewhere in that wind, Martha heard fiddle music drifting from town, as if someone were already practicing for Saturday's dance. And tomorrow, she'd have to decide if she was brave enough to walk into that celebration on Samuel's arm. Old Pete's fiddle strings squeaked like rusty gate hinges as he tuned that ancient instrument. The sound cut through evening air, sharp enough to make young ones cover their ears and giggle. Martha carried her herb bread toward the long communal table, steam still rising from loaves warm as a mother's lap. "Smells like heaven's own kitchen," said Mrs. Morrison, reaching for a thick slice before Martha could even set the pan down proper. The harvest celebration spread across Main Street like one of Sarah's old quilts. Tables groaned under the weight of good food: roasted corn on the cob, apple pies with flaky crusts, venison stew that had been simmering since dawn. Paper lanterns strung between buildings cast circles of amber light on packed dirt. Children darted between grown folks' legs, chasing lightning bugs in mason jars. Martha's herb bread disappeared faster than morning dew in August. Folks tore off chunks with their bare fingers, not bothering with butter knives or fancy manners. Those loaves that had taken her the whole blessed morning to bake were gone quicker than you could say grace. "Mrs. Clemens, Little Emma Olson tugged at Martha's skirt with sticky fingers. "Tell us about them fever spirits again." 3 more young ones gathered around Martha's knees: the Patterson twins, the Morrison boy, Henderson's youngest girl, their faces turned up like sunflowers seeking morning light. "Ain't no fever spirits, child," Martha said, crouching down to their level. "Just bad water and good medicine the Lord provided." "But you made the bad spirits go away," Emma insisted, her eyes wide as saucers. "Mama told me so." Martha smoothed the child's corn silk hair, feeling those fine strands slip between her work-roughened fingers. "Your mama's the one stayed up all night, keeping you cool with wet cloths. She did the real healing work." The fiddle music started up proper, then a lively reel that set boots tapping against wooden planks laid down for dancing. Samuel appeared at Martha's elbow, his hand warm and steady against her back. "Care to take a turn?" Martha glanced around at the couples forming up for the first set, women's calico skirts swirling as their menfolk spun them in wide circles. "Don't know the proper steps. I'll teach you what I remember." Samuel's palm pressed against hers, rough calluses catching on her own work-worn skin. He guided her onto that makeshift dance floor where other couples moved and practiced rhythm to Pete's fiddle. The music swept them into motion. Samuel's boots found the beat while Martha's feet stumbled to keep pace. She stepped on his toes twice, earning patient smiles instead of harsh words. "Just follow my lead," he murmured close to her ear. "Relax yourself." By the third song, Martha's steps matched his natural as breathing. Her blue cotton dress swirled around her ankles as Samuel spun her through the turns. Other dancers nodded approval when she passed Henderson's wife, Dr. Peterson with his missus, even Sheriff Hawkins dancing with the young schoolmarm. Mayor Thompson climbed onto a wooden crate as the music faded. His voice carried over the crowd's happy chatter. "Before we say blessing over this feast, want to thank someone special." He gestured toward Martha. "This good woman saved 7 of our precious children when fever struck, worked day and night, asking nothing in return." Applause rippled through that gathering like wind through wheat. Martha's cheeks burned hotter than her cook stove, but folks kept clapping till Thompson raised his hand for quiet. "Millbrook's proud to call you neighbor, Mrs. Clemens." More clapping. Children rushed to wrap their arms around Martha's waist. Grown folks pressed close to shake her hand. Murmur thanks. Ask about winter herb supplies. The celebration lasted past midnight. Couples danced till their feet ached. Children fell asleep in their parents' arms, and old-timers told stories that grew taller with each telling. Samuel and Martha slipped away as the last fiddle notes faded. They walked home through prairie grass silvered by starlight, her hand tucked natural as you please into the crook of his arm. On the porch, Samuel had built a swing from pine planks and good rope. They sat side by side, wood creaking gentle under their weight. Martha's rough palm rested in Samuel's calloused hand, like it had always belonged there. "Been thinking," Samuel said. His thumb traced slow circles on her knuckles. "Two people work better than one on a spread this size." Martha studied his profile in the darkness. "That's so. Seems reasonable to make it permanent, legal-like, before the preacher." Those words hung between them, practical as discussing cattle feed or fence repairs. Martha squeezed his fingers, felt him squeeze back. "Reasonable," she agreed. Autumn stars wheeled overhead, bright as scattered coins. Oil lamps winked out one by one across town, their town now. Martha realized. The place where children called her name and women asked for healing remedies, where men tipped hats and thanked her for saving their families. Samuel's shoulder pressed warm against hers as they rocked in comfortable silence, watching winter constellations rise above the horizon. "You know, sometimes I sit on my own porch in the evening and wonder if we've forgotten what Samuel and Martha knew by heart, that real belonging isn't about who fits in and who doesn't, but about who's willing to roll up their sleeves when neighbors need help. In our modern world of social media and virtual friendships, we've somehow lost that simple truth. Martha discovered genuine community comes from showing up, doing the honest work, and treating each other with basic human decency. Martha didn't earn her place in Millbrook through fancy speeches about acceptance. She earned it by grinding willow bark at 3 a.m. while children burned with fever. Samuel didn't change hearts through grand gestures or moral sermonizing. He changed them by quietly choosing kindness over conformity, day after day, until even the doubters couldn't deny what they witnessed with their own eyes. Maybe that's the lesson we need most these days, that real change happens not in government buildings or corporate boardrooms, but in kitchen conversations, shared labor, and those thousand small moments when we choose to see each other as human beings deserving respect and dignity. This story is a work of fiction inspired by historical accounts of American frontier life, created solely for entertainment purposes. The narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior toward any individual or group. All characters, events, and situations depicted are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or to actual events, is purely coincidental. The story explores themes of redemption, community, and human dignity within a historical Western setting while maintaining complete respect for all readers.